I'm Des Brogan. I was born and brought up in Glasgow, went to Edinburgh as a full-time teacher and continued teaching there until 1996 when I gave up teaching to develop Mercat Tours full-time, and I've now recently retired as the Director of Mercat Tours and Mercat Tours International.
And I'm Frank McGrail. I was one of the co-founders of Mercat Tours along with Des. I left Mercat Tours in the mid-90s and ended up as Deputy Director of Education in Edinburgh, and I'm a retirer from that. I came back to work with Mercat Tours.
I remember in 1985, early 1985, walking down the Royal Mile one day with my wife and kids and thinking there's lots of visitors here, there's nobody doing any guiding, I wonder if we should do something. And I remember contacting at some point my three close friends who were also young history teachers. We were all young Turks in those days, and we met and decided that we could perhaps do something, set up a wee company doing history tours. So in February, late February 1985, we met in my house. I've still got the minutes of the meeting, and we decided we would set up a walking tour company, and that's where it all started.
Yeah, just to add to that, I remember the initial moment, the conception, if you like, of the idea. It was the middle of the teacher strikes, and four of us had been at a course. We were all history teachers, and I remember bemoaning the fact that craft and design teachers could go and do people's kitchens, do homework at the weekend, but history teachers couldn't. And Des saying, but maybe we could, and he shared the idea of Mercat Tours. And then later, of course, we had the official meeting in his house.
Do you remember when we first met, it was like, you get four teachers, especially four history teachers together, and you get 10 opinions. We decided we would try and come to an arrangement, an agreement, what the company should be called.
Yes.
Do you remember we came out through all sorts of different
Yeah, we had graduate
ideas.
tours.
That's it.
And then we thought we'd call ourselves the Edinburgh Caddies.
Yep.
We got leaflets printed for that.
Yep.
And of course, we then discovered that another company, about 2 weeks before, had also started up and called themselves the Caddies. So we did the decent thing and we settled on Mercat Tours. Do you want to tell them why?
Well, as far as I remember, it was we were trying to imitate history as much as possible. And we remembered that in the olden days when visitors came to the city, they would congregate at the Mercat Cross. There would always be a local person there to show them around, tell them what different things were. So our idea was to recreate the past, and we would be the modern guides, and we would be at the Mercat Cross, and we would take people around and we would tell them about the history of the Royal Mile and so on. Therefore, it made eminent sense to call ourselves Mercat Tours.
And funnily enough, the way the company developed, it was a perfect place because the Mercat Cross is not only historical, it's full of horror stories, it's full of hauntings. So the three H's of Mercat Tours, history, horror, hauntings, are all there at the Mercat Cross.
And it was right in the centre of the old town.
Yeah.
And people coming up and down the Royal Mile couldn't miss passing the Mercat Cross at some point. So it seemed to be the ideal place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we were the first to do it.
First scheduled regular tours on the Royal Mile.
Yeah. And the first tour took place on the first day of the summer holidays, 1st of July 1985.
Mm-hmm. And the skies opened up.
I seem to remember it was 2 days before we actually got anybody turning up.
Well, sorry, it wasn't quite 2 days. I'll tell you what happened. We actually decided we'd have an 11 o'clock tour and a 2 o'clock tour.
That's correct.
And it was like the first day of the Battle of the Somme. It just came pouring down. So there was nobody there at 11. We came back in drier weather at 2 o'clock, and there was nobody there either. But to my astonishment, this young man here approached two ladies in the street and said, "Would you like a tour of the Royal Mile?" And rather than running away, they looked at his handsome face and said, "Oh yes, please." So Mercat Tours had begun.
It was. It's not the first time I'd approached ladies in the street, I have to say. But in this case, it was successful. Yeah. So we did the first tour. I did the first tour, and then it kind of gradually developed from that. From that first week, there were 2 or 3s in each tour.
That first week actually predicted the whole future of Mercat Tours, because we had 3 history tours on every day.
Yep.
And we decided that we'd have a ghost tour on Friday and Saturday night.
Yep.
So we'd had between 2 people and maybe 8 or 9 people for all the history tours. On the Friday night, 30 people turned up for the ghost tour. And by the following month, we had ghost tours on every night. And of course, in the end, ghost tours far outnumbered the history tours.
That's right. And by the end of the holidays, we obviously had to go back to the school. But there were still people turning up. So we thought, oh, we'll just continue until the end of August. And then it was, oh, we'll just continue until the end of September. And we actually stopped at the end of September. I used to be in charge of the timetabling. And I timetabled us until the end of September. And then we stopped. But because phone calls kept coming to my house, I realised that there was an increased interest around Halloween time. Right. So we put some tours on, remember, around Halloween?
I do. I remember them very well because we were shocked to have hundreds of people turning. One of my favourite stories is about Queensberry House because it has all the elements of a typical Mercat tour. It has history, it has horror, it has haunting. The history first. The Earl of Queensberry was the man who brokered the Act of Union between Scotland and England in 1707. And he was going to hold a great banquet after the signing of the Act in his home at Queensberry House. So the whole family and all the servants went to witness the Act of Union being signed. They left one kitchen boy behind, roasting a pig in front of an open fire. But they had also left behind their son, an insane young man in his early teens who was already 6 foot tall and was imprisoned in an attic room because they did not want the public to know of his existence. When they returned from the Act of Union signing, they discovered that they could not get into the kitchen. They pushed and pushed on the door, and when they got inside, there was no longer a pig on the skewer, but instead there was the kitchen boy, and the son of the Earl of Queensberry was taking slices from the cooking carcass and eating them with obvious relish. And to this day, the building, now part of the Scottish Parliament, is said to be haunted by the spirit of that little kitchen